morning, where you are. Good day. Welcome to this episode of BalCanis Podcast. As you know, this podcast is to help you guys to invite other professionals so that we can discuss immigration matters. And today we are lucky and pleased to have one of the best, among the best, Julie McMahon. She is a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. She is also a mentor to many other immigration consultants like myself, and she has a lot of experience in the business. She has been working in immigration since 2013, if I'm not mistaken, but I will let her tell us about immigration. Not only that, but about herself, about why she got into immigration in the first place and why she's doing this. And then we will be talking today about the business immigration. So without any further ado, I will go ahead and say, welcome, Julie, and thank you. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me, Eddy. I really appreciate it. I'm always interested in learning from you as well, because you are someone who's very good at presentation. And I'm not. I'm kind of somebody who's got my nose in the books most of the time. So happy to be here. Happy to learn from you as well.
This is excellent. We will take everything that you know from the books and put it out there, and then our listeners and viewers will be also able to learn from you and from us. So Julie is the founder of Immigrant Business BC, and we are BalCAN Immigration Services. So today we will be working together in this. And Julie, why don't you go ahead and tell us about not only yourself, but tell us also about your business. So Immigrant Business BC. How did you start?
Yeah, I didn't necessarily think that I was going to ultimately run my own firm. I really didn't plan it. I was sort of set on working for others and working and sort of working my way up in the field, and I hoped that maybe I would be partner or something like that. And so, with immigration, it's a tough industry. You have to, really learn the ropes. But as you progress in the industry, you also come up against a lot of different forces that do affect your decision making. The fraud situation is prevalent. And as well, when I with my first sort of jobs in the field, I had just gotten back from living in Ireland and the UK for 7 years.
Okay.
And I had been running a very small nursing program, an international nursing program. It was very small, but it was called the International Health Exchange between Canada and Ireland. And that came out of Dublin Institute of Technology, and Enterprise Ireland gave me some funding to run that. Okay. And it was back and forth, but we were using the working holiday visas to get everybody to go back and forth. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I'd like to learn so that I can do that work. And I sort of saw immigration as the means to be able to do everything.
Okay.
In relation to the international education program that I was originally kind of running. So, I didn't really have, again, huge ambitions, but, with encountering the amount of ethical dilemmas on a daily basis, I felt that I eventually had to kind of go out on my own. And so, yeah, I mean, it's a challenge for all of us. And they're out there, these scenarios and situations that we all deal with. And so I just felt like, I know who I can trust. I can trust myself. I know I'm going to do it
Definitely.
correctly. I know I'm going to do it right.
Yes.
I know that I'm not going to say or do something that is not okay.
Not appropriate or not
and
legal. Yeah.
yeah, and I think I had the last person asked me to do a temporary resident visa for a Syrian refugee family, and that was it. Like I said to myself, I cannot entertain this type of activity anymore. I've got to distance myself, and
definitely,
and so I've been doing it, I guess, ever since. But I work with all different kinds of people. I don't work on my own.
All right.
There's a team.
So you have a team around you. Okay.
There's a team behind me. There's other RCACs that we're doing files together, including yourself. There's exactly. Staff that are behind me. There's a mentor or two who were reputable and who were good behind me as well.
So Julie, why don't we go in now and talk about business immigration programs out there? What can you tell us about?
Yeah, there's 27, at least 27 programs across Canada, but they are growing, right? Because we have the graduate entrepreneur programs that are also developing with the provinces. And I think it's important to kind of frame it that, the federal government has their own, business programs that they run and are very, very different than the
provinces,
the provincial programs. And then you also have to consider the fact that every province has its own agreement with the federal government, and those agreements really do vary quite a bit. So in the case of New Brunswick, for instance, New Brunswick's agreement is not as robust as Ontario's agreement is with the federal government. So some provinces can do things and can kind of go out on their own and be a bit of a renegade province and do things that other provinces may not be able to do because they are in a much more robust framework under the federal government. And you can see that with the smaller economies. The smaller economies in Canada, they want to retain the right and the ability to make the decisions when it comes to the business class.
All right. And I would like to try and make it simpler for our listeners. They know nothing about immigration in Canada. So let's assume we have people or potential candidates who are outside of Canada, and they would like to come here and do business here, come through business immigration programs. So how would they start? What can they know or learn about? Let's start maybe with the federal immigration programs and then maybe break it down. What do you think? How can we go ahead?
Sure.
And yes.
Sure. So, I always say that the first thing that we need to discuss and we need to do is we need to assess you for a business proposal or a business concept.
Okay.
So that's really the first step because, I don't know what regulation or law to apply unless I understand the business concept.
Definitely.
Okay. So everything comes from that. It's like I put a slide up, it was like the horse before the cart. The horse is before the cart. So the cart is off to the races, but the horse is being dragged along. Well, the horse needs to lead. And so it's the same with this process for business immigration is that you have to have a very clear business concept. And a lot of times the immigrant entrepreneur doesn't know necessarily what it is that they want to do.
Exactly.
Another thing that can really affect people is that depending on the the makeup of a particular stream or program, there are potentially points awarded for doing something that you've done in the past.
Okay.
So, it's really important to sort of assess yourself as an immigrant entrepreneur and say, can I do this? I want to do this in Canada, but can I physically do this? Do I have the skills? Do I have the education and background, in order to be able to actually run this business? And so does it make practical sense? And it's actually the same in career development, even with the skilled workers. We can transfer that model to the business person and say, are you a business owner now? Or are you a senior manager?
Okay.
And then everything sort of flows from there. There are, wonderful programs. There's the LMIA owner operator, which is, obviously something that has to be done by a professional. I wouldn't recommend going through Service Canada without counsel to protect you.
And that's why you are here. That's why our listener, you are listening to Julie. She's an expert in that. And obviously, if you want to come here in Canada, do business or start a business or maybe purchase a business here, feel free to give us a call. We will have Julie's contact in the description of this video, or you can also contact BalCAN Immigration Services. As she very much pointed it out, we work together so we can guide you through this process. Sorry to interrupt you, Julie. I had to throw this out there. So you keep going.
Yeah, so just to say that, a lot of people will get caught up in something like, C10. Well,
and what is C10? They don't know what it is.
Exactly. And they focus on it. And, first of all, that is highly, highly discretionary. Secondly, the criteria is not really there. It's not actually stated.
Okay.
So, it's something where, again, unless you're an expert, you're not going to even know what you ultimately have to submit for that. Okay. And, I get phone calls all the time about, I submitted it and we didn't hear anything. Well, that is something that is normally processed in a couple of weeks. So if it's been 6 months and you haven't heard anything, it's because, you were winging it.
Okay.
You didn't seek professional advice. You didn't work with counsel. You just thought that you would submit something and then you never heard from Canada. So that is something that I do hear from time to time. And sometimes I hear that from a representative who has decided to go ahead and do a file and not co-counsel with someone who's done those files before.
Exactly.
So, that can be very problematic. Another thing is that there's a million C10s. There's all different kinds of work permits and business work permits available. And I mean, it would take all day and all night to go through the list of the international agreement work permits that are available under international agreements like CETA or CUSMA, or also known as NAFTA. So there are so many business exemption work permits that are available. There are also the Canadian interest business work permits, which we mentioned a little bit before. And so, you have to know the country of where you're coming from and what's available under the trade agreements. And then you start breaking it down from there. But you really do, again, I just say, when it comes to the business work permits, they are a good tool, but they are not necessarily going to lead to permanent residency unless you are very careful and you really have a solid immigration and PR strategy behind that. So those are tools that people can use, absolutely, but they are short-term tools. They are not meant for the long term.
All right,
And
so just for our listener, Julie, just want to make to help them a little bit here. What Julie is actually saying is that you guys who would like to come to Canada and do business here, you can come, provided, of course, that you have the appropriate counsel, you know what you want to do, or you get the appropriate help. But there are ways for you to come here to Canada through, for example, work permit. There are exemptions that you can take advantage of and come and work in Canada, working on your business, and then probably become a PR, but not all of them will lead to PR. But Julie, let's say, for example, a listener is out there listening to us, and he would like to come to Canada. I'll give an example. A candidate, let's say from Nigeria, for example, would like to come here. What would be the first step for that person? So obviously, contact the professional that you are or that we are, and then what is this person going to be looking for? What are the chances for somebody from Nigeria to come here and to start a business, provided that the person has already a business back home, running it, managing it? How does that work? What does that person do?
yeah, so again, it comes down to the business concept and whether or not it's something that fits within the Canadian system.
Okay.
So we have to develop the business concept.
Okay.
We that is the first and foremost. So we have to look at what they've done in the past, and then we have to also talk about what they think they could do and confidently do in Canada. So, and then we have to see if there is a door that is open within the Canadian system, and it's a really large country, that will let them in and support this business concept, and then ultimately look towards developing a strategy once the work permits are issued for permanent residency as well. But the pathway that's chosen is very important. And for the federal level, there are benchmarks, whether it's express entry or another avenue, that need to be met.
Can you give us an example of criteria that are required? I'm going to repeat that. Can you give us an example of conditions to be met, criteria, for example, for at the federal level?
Yeah. So, one of the things that is very important is that I always start with a good old-fashioned skilled worker assessment. I actually start in the assessment process with the client with the skilled worker assessment under express entry. And we start eliminating the options from there, because if we don't have certain criteria met, like CLB 7, for instance, it's an absolute requirement for the skilled worker. And then as well, education is a requirement for the skilled worker. And whether or not we think it's something that we could actually do to get 200 points for arranged employment through the express entry system. Now, this is for senior managers and business owners going through the express entry, and it works very different for them. But do we have the criteria met of the skilled worker, and do we have the points enough to be able to see in the long term that there's going to be an invitation received to apply for permanent residency? And then we can look at doing a business permit or an LMIA owner-operator. But we cannot go and do an LMIA owner-operator without knowing where this person fits within the federal permanent residency system. And if they don't meet the criteria, then they can't do that pathway. It's not possible.
For sure, for sure. Well, I've heard a lot of people or client call and ask about money because they hear that they need to have a lot of money, $1 million or $400,000 or $800,000. Are there requirement for available funds for the potential candidates?
So, the sort of the word on the street when it comes to immigration law is that in the federal system, there's no requirement.
Okay.
Nobody's saying it has to be this much. Okay. Nobody's saying that. But does it have to be a clear business concept? Absolutely. Does it have to be scalable? Yes. Does it have to reach the benchmark of senior manager, which is NOC 00, which is a high level, high skilled NOC in the system? Absolutely. And so in order to be a senior manager level and gain permanent residency through your NOC, you've got to have 3 people under you for that.
Okay.
So it stands to reason, and it sounds reasonable to me when I think about it that way, that, between maybe 150 and 250,000 would be sort of the minimum level. 100,000 would certainly be very minimal, but I have seen owner operators be approved for less than 70,000.
Okay.
But they did not reach or come near permanent residency. They had to scramble and find another pathway for permanent residency, because that is not NOC 00. That is one person. 70,000 is one person with one salary.
Okay.
Right.
So what we are saying here is that, let's say we have somebody with who has I have $200,000. I would like to invest and start a business in Canada. Is that possible?
Yes, because the absolutely.
Okay.
There's no criteria. Again, the startup visa doesn't have a minimum criteria, but there's expenses for the incubator center that you need to go into and be mentored by and pay their monthly lease costs. So you can't come with nothing. I would say that, like 100,000 in your pocket, if it's the startup visa and you think you can do it on your own. But again, I'd have to see the business concept. There's 100,000 in the regional pilot for BC. The entrepreneur category has been paused 2 days ago. So that is news to all of us and has affected clients that we have right now. That the entrepreneur, is paused. BC Regional has taken over because they want to develop the northern part of British Columbia. So, if it fits with the provincial criteria, if it fits with the province's goals, what they ultimately want to achieve, that is a very important consideration that entrepreneurs often don't talk about and never address. How is this going to help your province develop itself?
Definitely.
And how does it align with the current goals of that province? So, but just to say that, overall, I would say that it's very difficult, even though the regional pilot is $100,000, which is the lowest investment in Canada. It is very difficult to work with a minimum sometimes. Because unless you have a local partner or what's called a co-registrant on the file, you've got to, in those cases, you probably got to, partner with people.
Okay. So then, Julie, what do you think about business sector, are there other sectors that are more would have more chances than other? Or it really, as you have been mentioning it since we started, it's really depend on the business idea, on the business plan.
Yeah.
Now, okay.
I would say that, and we just did a business webinar actually on the weekend about this, and we had a company come and talk to us about startup innovations.
Okay.
And they build, technologies for new startups that can take a product potentially global, right?
Okay.
It's an innovative idea. It can take the product global. It can, and you literally buy this concept.
Okay.
That is something that is possible, providing that you can do it, providing that there's a match there. Okay. So, I would say that education tech is the Wild West of North America right now. And we have seen that with the success stories of Applyboard and Skip the Dishes. And so we have seen how education tech is kind of taken off, right? It's a platform, and it allows people to sign up for school and to get registered for school. They have agreements with, all kinds of colleges and universities, and then we all take part in that platform as well. And so it's got some problems. It's not perfect. I've expressed some concern about regulatory framework. We need regulation by the provinces, but nevertheless, the government will fund it if it creates employment. In the case of Skip the Dishes, when we look at that business model, we can see that, and I remember this actually from a comment from a Bank of Montreal venture capitalist. He said, well, I would never fund something like that. I wouldn't look at it. I would not even touch it. That to me is not a real business. He was very uppity about it. And I thought, well, yes, but Canada funded Skip the Dishes. Canada,
and look at it now.
To Skip the Dishes. And the reason they said yes to Skip the Dishes is because there are employees in every city that are helping to run the company, right? And then it creates also a gig economy, for better or for worse, a gig economy where people are delivery drivers for a short period of time while they are studying or working on other things. So it does create jobs. Yes, there is a tech component as well. And yes, there's probably a little bit of AI going on there too, perhaps. And certainly with the education tech platform Applyboard as well. But they are creating employment also.
Okay, and that is very key.
Yeah, a venture capitalist though said, I'm not going to touch that, but Canada will. Canada would touch that. Canada would support businesses like that. So it's interesting to see how our own government has changed its tune from the old days of the shareholder. It's all about the shareholders. It's all about their payouts. They better get paid. And then the CEO bonuses. And instead we have a shift, right, to the active manager model with employees, and that the company must create real value in society.
Exactly. So, and you mentioned that it's very key then for all those companies that are, or those people that are trying to come in Canada, create businesses or buy them here, to actually create jobs for permanent residents and Canadians here. It has to be profitable for the Canadian economy.
That's right.
All
yes,
right.
it has to have a benefit to our Canadian economy, and
Absolutely.
the benefit is that people drive prosperity, not capital, not passive investment.
All right. So another question then for you: if you came across some refusals of applications on this kind of program, we're talking about business ones, for any reason or another, can you give us some ideas of why an application could be refused and why, and how it could be successful? Because you've done a lot of them that have been successful. So what are the tips? What can you tell us about it?
Well, sometimes I would say just overall, it would be very common to have to do a couple of registrations for people. Okay, because sometimes you get a really difficult, very picky officer, and you have to put it in a second time and hope for a better score. It's not to say that you're not going to make some changes too to get their points up. You absolutely will, but you're looking at a couple of registrations and it's a lot of work. So start there. I haven't had a refusal, but I've had some low scores in the past.
Okay.
That does happen. Everybody has to be prepared for that. Okay, that's going to happen. Okay. And in the case of BC getting rid of the entrepreneur category, well, they lowballed all of the scores for the entrepreneur registrations that were in process. They lowballed those scores on purpose to get rid of those files. So I'm just about to write a nasty letter to BC about one of them, because it's not what we were expecting and it's not what this person ultimately deserved. But you have to do it again, though. That's just the first attempt, right? There's a second attempt, third attempt to come as you refine, and also as you bring the province and this other person together into a marriage that suits both parties. And so in that case, you have to be ready for that. Another thing is that you've got to be really clear when it comes to regulation, right? This is, in this particular case, it's a pharmacy. It's heavily regulated,
absolutely.
Right? And we had a lot of conversations with the College of Pharmacists. We had a lot of conversations with various pharmacists that work in BC, and ultimately partnered with this individual. And so everything was set, but you also will come up against the fact that the officer doesn't understand the regulatory framework of pharmacy and community pharmacies in British Columbia. They don't understand it, and they're not going to take the time to understand it. And nobody's going to be reading the Act and the College of Pharmacists Act, right? The officer's not going to read that. So our job as counsel is to explain it to them. And explain it to them again, and then again, and then again. And follow the regulations and the framework until you get the answer that you're looking for, which is the yes answer, or which is a higher point score, if you choose to ask for reconsideration and all of those other things. Now, when a refusal actually takes place, it is because of the fact that, number one, there was absolutely nothing that addressed locally or within the community what is actually taking place there right now, and what the actual need is for that business. You simply didn't address it at all. Not even a little bit. And number two would be things like, and I'm kind of putting the refusals into categories rather than sort of a tight list. You just didn't research the market at all. You went to the States and got somebody to write a business plan for you who knows nothing about what's happening in, for instance, Vernon, British Columbia. So they wrote a business plan. You paid for it. You paid them, their $5,000 or $10,000 USD for that plan, and it's worthless, right? And you gave it to the officer, and they looked at it and they said it was worthless too, because it is worthless. It's not addressing anything relevant to the criteria that they have clearly laid out for you. So, it's doing that due diligence, and you either do it or you don't. And if you don't, you're going to be slammed. You will not get anywhere with them. They won't read it. They'll know right away within the first page of reading it that it wasn't researched. Number two, I would say, would be things like, you don't have any intention of coming to Canada at all. You have put your proposal in
Okay.
in a way that has given them the impression that you are immigrating rather than building a business
A
model
business, really.
and building
Okay.
an actual business concept, and that you're going to run this thing.
Mm-hmm.
They can see that very clearly by some of the things that ultimately take place. Like, for instance, not applying for the work permits when they issued them to you.
Okay.
The support letter, right? The support letter for the work permits. Yeah, that never got done, and you kept putting it off. And then you start asking for extensions of the work support letter. And all of a sudden it's a couple of years in and you're still not here. You're still not here. You're still not starting the business. You're still not running the business. And, they're kind of wondering what's going on.
What's going on? Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that is something that will be red flagged. And there is absolutely no way that you're going to meet your performance agreement benchmarks and targets. And ultimately, they will not be issuing you a nomination certificate because you didn't fulfill your duties and obligations. And, therefore, we will not be going on to a permanent residency application.
Okay. Oh, wow. So, and then that stops right there.
It does.
Okay. Unfortunate.
And also you have to watch out for the community members who are coming into the pub, your craft beer pub, or they're coming into your mailbox or delivery service, and they're asking you how you're doing, and the community liaison for BC in Osoyoos perhaps wants to just check in with you and see how it's all going. And you want to be really clear with them, and we coach people, and we have to coach people because people are oftentimes not very forthcoming and not saying the right things, and then they make a little note, right, and then they go back to BC and they file the another report, and the report isn't very favorable.
Okay, and a question for you. You've actually answered some of my question that I was about to ask about common mistakes and how can we definitely help people out there. Can you just try and say it again for some of our listeners out there or viewers out there who are interested in coming to Canada and would want us to help them? What can they expect? How can we help them really so that they can understand and know that it is something that will be beneficial to them?
Well, I always start with a business consultation. Okay. And for that, it's probably my rate is around $500, but sometimes it's less depending on the circumstances. I'm quite flexible. Okay. And we always discuss the initial business concept and I get some ideas going. And it's then we put a presentation together, and we do the assessment. So the client gets the full assessment, which is a Word document saved to PDF of all of the assessment that was done according to their particular credentials. And then they also get a presentation on the current business climate, business ideas, business concepts that might be available and that might be a good fit.
Okay.
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Definitely. I hear you. Do you only work with British Columbia, BC immigration programs, or you actually work with other programs out there, let's say Ontario, New Brunswick, or?
Yeah, I've done Ontario. I've done New Brunswick. The thing about Ontario is that 2020, their number was just 1. So, it's a problem, right? Because pandemic hit and everything else. Now it's coming back, but it's been slow, and it's a highly competitive area. Yes. So there is, I feel, greater opportunity in the smaller economies. Now, BC is not a small economy. It's the second or third biggest economy in Canada.
Uh-huh.
Okay, and Alberta's had a tough time, so they used to be. But just to say that, BC is open for business, and I guess I will always be biased to BC because I'm a Vancouver girl and I was born here, and I know it the best. But that's not to say it is the best. I think that there are low level investment schemes in other provinces
as well. Yeah.
Looking at, and New Brunswick used to have actually a direct entry for PR where they would not issue a work permit, but they would do you paid a $75,000 business deposit, and then you landed as a permanent resident.
Okay.
In New Brunswick. So it was a different system, but they've changed it. So just to say that, Quebec is now the only passive investment. I think it's $1.25 million dollars that you need to have. And they closed down the other one, and they've upped the amount of money that you have to give, and you have to give it for 5 years.
Exactly.
So everyone else across the board, even the prairie provinces, now have the requirement of an active manager. So you're coming to Canada if you do this, and that's it. But there is opportunity, and I would say the prairie provinces have some good opportunities. I would say to anybody in India who is maybe a farmer that I would look at Saskatchewan, because it does have direct entry for farmers.
Okay.
And then of course, look at the investment levels and make sure that you can do it. You can't just come and do a farm though. You've got to have 3 years of experience. You're not going to take anybody. But yes, you land as a permanent resident in that particular program. It's the only one. In Canada now that's a direct entry for PR. Well, the startup visa is, yes, but with a work permit that's optional, but you can land as a permanent resident. I think that the startup visa has a lot of great things going for it, because even though there's a lot of pressure for an innovative idea and it's got to have a global reach, there is tremendous support. And you don't have to have a work permit. A work permit is optional. You could land as a permanent resident, but boy, you had better make sure that you fulfill your duties and obligations, because what they might do is issue a conditional permanent residency to you.
Exactly.
Yes, you've landed as a permanent resident, but it's with the
Mm-hmm.
understanding that you're going to, for 2 years,
Exactly.
work on this. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we can see that there are a lot of business immigration programs. And what we're going to be doing with you, I hope you will be available and agree to do this with me, this exercise, for the benefit of our listeners and viewers. We will do it as much as we can and try to dive in specifically to each immigration program. It will take the time that it will take, but we will try and go and try to explain each immigration program so that they know and so that they can make the difference if they want to. This is just one episode. We will be making way more than that. And for our listeners and viewers out there, you have heard Julie McMahon, how brilliant she is, how knowledgeable she is. She knows the business immigration. You would like to come to Canada, start a business, purchase one. Do not hesitate. Give us a call here at BalCAN Immigration Services, or you can contact Julie directly at Immigrant Business BC. I will put her contact down there, but Julie, you can go ahead. Please give your email address so that people who want to contact you directly can do so.
Okay, well, everybody can reach me at julie@immigrantbusinessbc.ca, or on our office WhatsApp phone as well. Happy to talk. Make sure you say that you came through Eddy's network, so that I know where you came from, so that we can hook up with Eddy and make sure that we've covered all our bases there.
Exactly. So what Julie is trying to tell you there is that we co-counsel, so we work together on cases. So it will be a pleasure to be able to help you out there. Unfortunately, this was the time that we had today. We don't want to drag it too long. More episodes will be coming. Stay tuned. I would like to take this time, Julie, to thank you so very much for your availability today. We've covered a lot. Some of them, I am sure, we will have to come back because it was very technical, and it was great. I really enjoyed it, and thank you very much for your time. Anything you want to add to conclude? Anything you want to say? Oh, but before we conclude, I am going to ask you my question about you, about something, a discovery about you. I would like our listeners and viewers to get to know you better. What you like, what you don't like. Oh, yes. A revelation about you. But before that, I mean, you choose what you want to do. You want to talk about your revelation first and then give us your last word, or you do how you want it?
Just, I would say to all of the viewers that, you want to, be yourself, and you want to come and you want to do something that makes you feel confident and comfortable. Mm-hmm. And so just bear that in mind, that we can find something that will do that for you. We won't ever ask you to do something that you can't do. Mm-hmm. So just remember that we're here to help you, and we're here to protect you from all of the other things that can go wrong. Yes. I guess, I had an immigrant experience to Ireland. I immigrated to Ireland, and then Ireland crashed in 2008, 9, and 10, and I had to immigrate back to Canada. So I've done it twice, and it may not be readily apparent when people look at me that I have had a full-on immigrant experience, and I am one of you. Even though I may not look like you, I am you, and I understand how hard this decision is and how difficult and a journey can be to immigrate to another country. So just know that.
Perfect. Very that was heart to heart. I like that, Julie. So this will conclude our episode today about BalCanis Podcast. Thank you very much, Julie, once again, and thank you to you, our listeners and our viewers, for taking the time to listen to our podcast or to view it on our various platforms out there. We will see you next time for our next episode. Thank you, and you have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.